what we're facing now is who's going to bear the burden of a crashing economy, an economy that's actually being deliberately crashed by the Federal Reserve. When you raise interest rates this high, like Paul Volcker did between 1979 and 82, yes, you curb inflation by devastating big parts of the population. There are many other things the government can do besides monetary policy that become deflationary. Like you could make mass transit free right now. You could have a price freeze, as Richard Nixon did in August 1971. It's not as if the government doesn't have other tools. And by the way, the Economic Policy Institute, I'll finish on this, in a report last year said that 50% of the price increases between 2020 and the beginning of 2022, 50% were attributable to profit growth, meaning it's very profitable for corporations, especially in the monopoly tier, to raise prices rather than invest because they can make a lot of money. And if society acclimates itself to this kind of inflationary expectations, it's very good for corporate earnings, very good for the billionaires. Again, we have to look at this from a human point of view.
I would, excuse me, certainly not be a supporter of those types of policies, and I would be extremely dubious that they are actually going to be useful. Our experience with wage and price controls in the 1970s should be an extremely cautionary tale. On the one hand, yes, it keeps the prices from going up, but it creates shortages and misallocation throughout the economy because different prices need to grow at different rates to allocate goods and services across different sectors, and that's shut down when the government comes in and tries to control all wages and prices. Very, very few economists think that our experience with wage and price controls was a success. Making mass transit free, of course, just trades one problem for another. Yes, it reduces the price that people pay for mass transit, but somebody has to pay for it. So there's an additional burden on the taxpayer in terms of additional taxes. That's not making taxpayers on average better off. So I don't see that as a particularly constructive approach.
Okay, Brian, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be very easy if the government wants to, when you have this kind of wage differential, this kind of income inequality, you can tax. If you're worried about taxes, well, tax the people who have tons of money. Tax those who are very affluent. A 1% tax on the very, very affluent won't crash the economy. It won't put families into foreclosure. It's as if we're talking about inflation as if this is something God-given, some divine creation that the Federal Reserve can only be a one-note choir, when in fact the government has this enormous power. When you talk about the wage price freeze problems in the early 1970s, the U.S. spent about $1 trillion on the war in Vietnam. Talk about waste spending. There's a question of allocation of resources to make it rational, to shift the burden away from those who have the least to those who can afford it. And that's the policy and the power of the government. But so far, the Democrats and the Republicans are perfectly unwilling to do anything like that.